Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the problem with life coaches and actually of counsellors and I guess therapists themselves. Why it can be really hard to find a good therapist, whether it's a counsellor, whether we're going down the coaching route, whether it's a psychologist, and why it can be so hard just to find someone who can help you out when you're feeling like shit. So let's start the video about what I do. I'm a mental health counsellor, specifically I'm a psychosynthesis counsellor. I qualified back in 2011, and I'm also a life and wellness coach. I qualified that back in 2016, I believe. So I have both a vested interest in the field of counselling and in the field of coaching. Now I absolutely love counselling, and I started quite young. I got into counselling training when I was 22. But I did find that there was one major problem with counselling, and that was it kept dragging on and on, going back into the past, reopening wounds. From someone myself who found it hard to talk about wounds from the past at such a young age, I felt there was way too much pressure to keep reopening and keep revisiting. And as such, I actually felt it did hinder my progress in a sense. Since I've qualified and since I've had many clients who've experienced traumatic childhood events, they don't want to keep going back into the past and talking about the events. It can be quite re-traumatizing to do so, and often the progress can seem a bit slow because you're having to deal with emotional flashbacks and whatever's been triggered from the session. So that's why many victims of abuse actually seek out coaching or seek out cognitive behavioral therapy, because you're not so much going into the past to make sense of why it happened, but instead putting it to one side and thinking, okay, so what habits are self-destructive? What is it that I want to achieve? What are my goals? And what's stopping me from achieving my goals? This is what brought me into coaching, because I could see from people's experiences and testimonies that they were experiencing healing at a quicker rate without the counselling. And I thought maybe, just maybe, it would be a really good idea to include another string to my bow, that is of coaching. So I trained in coaching, and I really benefited from it to actually learn how to put people's stories to one side and stop talking about the past and work with the here and now. And what I trained in was called Energy for Life Wellness, and it's working with on the precept of energy. Everything is all energy, so stagnant energy needs to shift, whether that's the level of the psychological or in the physical. And it's interesting because it's a concept that I work with in my personal life with my work with snakes. You see, for many centuries, they were considered keepers of wisdom, and they were also seen as being transmuters of stagnant energy. They were likened to Kundalini, and that's the serpent that goes up your spine and activates a Kundalini awakening. That's what the Hindus are talking about. And again, it's a symbol of the snake, and it's transforming the individual along the way, transforming their energy centers, their chakras. It's all about transformation of energy. And whether you think it's a bit, airy-fairy or a bit too new agey, that's fine. I'm talking about the symbolism here of transforming thought, transforming energy, and focusing your attention on that, and that's becoming your reality. That's my precept in coaching and in meditation training as well. So I see immense value in coaching. I qualified, and I've got to say my actual coaching experience was a lot shorter, nowhere near as intense as counselling was. As a counsellor, it took me 4 years, I should say. I needed to have a bachelor's. I've got a bachelor's in psychology, and it took me 4 years part-time, seeing clients. I needed to have 500 client hours, and also the same number of hours of seeing counselling myself, as well as all the projects and dissertations and all that. So it was pretty intense doing counselling and experiencing counselling. When you're in your 20s, you're still building your ego and still learning about yourself. Prefrontal cortexes are still growing and don't really mature until the age of 25. So what happens in counselling is that who you think you are, everything is just put in front of you and just ripped apart. And it can be quite a painful experience. And even more so when it's in a group therapy session. Did not like group therapy, absolutely hate it. I still do now, not for me. Although counselling training was pretty intense, it gave me invaluable experience and training in how to actually listen to people. Active listening skills are so valuable in life. and also how to think psychologically about things, how to learn about when we're emotionally triggered, what projections are. These are all amazing things. How to identify the transference when you're with a client, and the transference and that triggers counter-transference. Just things like this, which someone who's just had very basic life coaching training would not get any of this training, and as a result can actually hinder the progress of their client. So the great thing about coaching is that it's really into motivation and being a better self, and that's what I'm into as well. I'm very much into being the better person that I can be. So after I qualified as a life coach, I used to go to seminars, I went to conventions, and I even went to a Tony Robbins Unleash the Power Within. Yeah, that experience is what created the Goth Coach in the first place. I've got to say, before I talk about the Tony Robbins experience, I was going to conventions and I was becoming more and more disillusioned by life coaches. It seemed that all they cared about was making money, and they were just spewing out the same things that everyone else is saying. So I was feeling a bit put off by all these charlatans in the field. They're quite obvious, and all they're interested in is not so much about coaching people, but about telling people, be a life coach and you can make lots of money. That's not why I got into it. I came into it as from a genuine place of wanting to help people and thinking coaching could help deliver results quicker. And people weren't talking about this as much as how to make money out of it. So I stopped going to conventions and I ended up getting back into counselling as a result. Now, there was a time a few years ago when someone I knew offered me the Tony Robbins ticket. Normally, I wouldn't think about going because it's just way too expensive for me. I respect the guy, I like what he has to say, but Unleash the Power of It is way too expensive. I mean, that is just a massive rip-off. But you know what? I thought, I'm not going to diss it until I try it. I've got an opportunity. I'm going to go for it. Wow. So if you've never been to Tony Robbins Unleash the Power of It, be warned, it is so cheesy, so cringy. And I felt like the Addams Family when they had to watch their kids pantomime. I should have prepared myself. I should have watched more videos about what his seminars were like. I must admit it was a bit of an impulsive purchase. So what happened was I walked in and it was in the London Excel Centre. It was really busy, really crowded. I get social anxiety when places are way too crowded anyway. And I was on my own. I didn't know anyone else who was going. And to be honest, I was more interested to see how he worked as a coach rather than wanting to be healed by him, because I was starting out my own coaching business, so I wanted to get ideas, and I thought, you know, well, he's like supposedly the best in the field, I could learn from him. And I'm waiting in the queue just to be able to get in, and he's got his cronies coming up to me like, high five. No, please do not come up to me and ask to high five me. It's not the 90s anymore. Which is ironic coming from someone who fucking loves the 90s and only listens to 90s music. I don't appreciate people coming up to me in their cheesy manner, in my face, wanting to high-five me all the time. It wasn't just one person, it was all of them. He has all these volunteers who are like super bubbly and just in your face, and it was a nightmare. I hated it, and this was only within the first half hour. But I thought, you know, I paid for this, I'm gonna sit it out. So the first day, Tony gives the first talk, and credit to him, he's fabulous on stage. I find him so engaging, really charismatic guy, and really gets the message out there in an easily digestible manner. However, it's quite apparent that he relies on group and cult workings to really get the vibe going, because he was blasting out music and intentionally getting people into a hyped up state, and he was playing the worst music, and there's nothing that irritates me more than what I consider is bad music. And this was like, you know, modern day electronic kind of Justin Bieber bad music, and people really getting into it and dancing. They even had like a little dance pit. I was filming it and I'm like, man, if only they were playing some metal music, we can get a mosh pit going, that would be my kind of scene. And that's where the idea of the Goth Coach came up. It was this whole like antithesis to Tony Robbins. You know, I'd come out some Lamb of God or some Marilyn Manson, personal Jesus. Reach out and touch faith. Because that's kind of the image he is portraying. I mean, he's done a Netflix show like I'm Not Your Guru, subtext, I want you to think I'm your guru. And he gets people worked up and they finally see their glimpse of God and, you know, hallelujah. And then he's saying to people, okay, turn to the person on your left and be like, I'm gonna outshout you, I'm gonna have more energy than you. And you're gonna turn to that person and be like, I'm gonna like outdance you. And that person looked at me and I'm like, nah. Don't even try it.
And we're all here to learn, to grow, and to just plain have fun!
Because that's what being privileged is all about!
I absolutely hate cringy, cheesy, corny things. I couldn't stand pantomime as a kid. I think I was traumatized by watching too many pantomimes that my mum dragged me to. So I'm not really good even with musicals or anything like really camp or corny. So this was like a personal hell for me, and telling me to like, you know, be competitive with my neighbor and how loud I can be was just like, I got up and left after that. Actually, I went outside for a smoke first and saw some other British guys smoking, and they were saying the same thing. They were like, it's too much for me. And they're like, it's mostly for like a European audience or Americans who come here and, you know, a bit different to my kind of subculture. So I've got to say that was actually my last straw of getting involved in the world of life coaches. I felt quite disillusioned by people just wanting to make money. And I also felt with counselling as well that this level of snobbery that you find and level of snobbishness. No world was perfect, you know, I was finding it frustrating, like, well, where do I belong? So I just decided to create my own path in life and provide coaching and counselling both online and in person. And I do come across a lot of counselling and coaching clients who have had bad experience. And that's coming from life coaches who just weren't qualified, and also came from counsellors who just were not seeing them right and just didn't connect and were misjudging them. And they thought, well, even though they had the qualifications, they still let me down. So how do you find the right counsellor then? How do you find the right therapist that is qualified and is actually going to see you and witness you and give you the safe space that you need? Well, the answer is actually it's the relationship that you have with your therapist, whether it's your Reiki healer or it's your meditation teacher or it's your counsellor or it's your life coach. It's the relationship that you build with someone and the sense of trust and the safe space that's created between you two that the healing actually really comes. Now, obviously, I advocate someone who is skilled, because you need someone who's not going to be projecting onto you. You don't need someone who's going to be putting their own crap onto you. You don't need that. You need someone who is obviously skilled in being self-aware and has experience in this. And you also need someone who can empathize. And I strongly suggest finding someone who can empathize with where you've been. So often people will prefer to have a therapist, someone who has experienced abuse, someone who has been in relationships with people with personality disorders, someone who has had a family member, someone who still does have a family member with narcissism or mental health issues. Finding someone who can empathize with you because they've been there themselves, yet they're ahead on the path, further ahead than you, to be able to guide you to where they are now. That's the essence for me for what a true coach is, for what a true counsellor is as well. Now, as a counsellor, I also provide you with a mirror, so I'm mirroring back to you these aspects of you that you may not be seeing with your conscious mind. I'm helping you put pieces of the jigsaw back into place for you. You're doing all the work for this yourself. I'm just fostering the environment for which you can do so more easily. As a final tip, I just want to say, be wary about giving large sums of money at people who you consider to be spiritual leaders of some sort. And they're actually everywhere. They're leading events, they're running retreats, they're selling coaching programs and packaging. And I would honestly say, you have authentic people genuinely what they want to do and they're just trying to make money. Nothing wrong with that. And you also have the charlatans who are just out there to make money and absolute fake, and they do exist. The only way you're going to figure it out is just doing your research on someone and trusting your gut instinct about someone. That's right, the only person you can trust is yourself. And specifically, I'm talking about your gut instincts, your intuition, not when you overthink things and you start to question, which voice should I trust? It's your gut instincts, and it's often the very first thing that often we just don't want to admit, but it's there. Always trust your instincts when it comes to people. When it comes to people that you're giving money to as well, do I connect with them? Is there something off about them? Always question everything. I'm going to leave it there for now. For more information about what I do, for free coaching audios that I have, and for products that I sell, my books that I've written, please head on to my website, thegolfcoach.com. Have a great day. Bye.